hands-on, has a little bit of a play, and you all look over their shoulder. And we're hoping to inspire you to go back and do some interesting stuff yourself back in the station. All right, so we're going to be talking about making. So there may be a reason not wanting us to tell us about your podcast, but we'll get it out of you by the end of the session. All right, so we've got quite a few people in the room today. So if you have brought your own computer, Emma can help you get onto the Wi-Fi so that you can download Hindenburg, which is a editing program specifically just casters. So we're going to show you how to use it, and I'll talk a little bit more about why we're showing you that. If you haven't got your computer, you will say so. One of you, I'm gonna get to that. So let's go through this. And I'm going to show you some easy ways to. All right, audio. So when we're talking about audio, yeah. So when we're talking about audio on demand, that's a really broad kind of definition of any digital audio by request and not listened to via a live stream. So on demand includes full shows. So your program, some of you might have your programs on demand. Who's got on demand on their radio station's website? Glory back there. Awesome. It might be segments of your show that you've cut out and you've popped up online. It might be standalone audio put together and popped up online, or little clips out of your story. So that's all audio on demand. It means that someone can listen to it at any time, whenever they want, wherever they want. So when we're talking about that podcast subset of audio on demand, but there's a few differences in terms of what a true kind of podcast. They use recurring or collect. A lot of the time they're episodic. So who loves to watch and binge on television programs? I can't be the only one. Oh, look, yes, excellent. All right, so that's what we're thinking about when we're thinking about the type of podcast we're talking about today. Because we want to stretch your thinking about podcasts a little further, away from that idea of on demand and just taking the program that I already create on my radio show, which we all know takes heaps of work anyway, and stretch that a little bit further and think, okay, what's some unique online podcast content that I might like to create? And how can I go about doing that? The other thing is that podcast content can then go on air. So you can then play it on your radio shows. And, you know, we can share what is essentially a podcast series. It's called the National Features and Documentary Series. The winner for the National Features and Documentary Series this year actually came from 4EB, Katharina Losche, so amazing achievement from her. But what the National Features and Documentary Series is a podcast. We create 8 episodes of long-form radio documentaries, and we share them out across the entire world. And we share them out to community radio stations so they can download them and play them. But it also means people can get on Spotify, they can get onto any podcast, they can type in National Features and Documentary Series Australia, and it pops up and they can listen to it anywhere. They don't need to even know that it's created by the, you know, CMTO and the Community Broadcasting Association or the CRN. They don't need to know anything about that, which is really good. So when we're thinking about the podcast content that we're thinking about today, I can hear our audio playing. I just put a quote there about podcasting. We're talking about the creative audio storytelling that actually takes a little bit of time to craft. So I won't be surprised if you come away from the session today feeling a little bit overwhelmed and thinking, oh, I don't know if this I'm going to be able to do. Because to tell you the truth, podcasting does take time. It's thinking, oh, I don't know if this I'm going to be able to do. Because to tell you the truth, podcasting does take time. It takes a little bit of extra time on top of the work you're all already doing. Who's already flat out at their community radio station? Yeah, okay, cool. So I just want to get you a bit inspired, because what I often have found in my time working in community radio is that people have spent 10 years, 15 years doing their radio show every week. They're tired of that. They're being creative. They pass the baton on to somebody else to go and do the rest. Audio feature where they've gone out into the field and interviewed people as content for that radio program later. So think of it as an extension of your skills. So I asked one of our trainers, Tony Collins, who is an ABC producer. He's a podcast producer. He's worked in a lot of remote Indigenous communities, producing podcasts and teaching podcasting. What he thought the difference between a podcast and a broadcast was. And I've summarized what he said here, but I'm going to read his whole quote to you. He said, "It's a fine line what the difference is, but it's about, for me, it's the voice, that thoughtful, reflective voice that puts the character inside your head and places the narrator and all their foibles right in the middle of the story. It doesn't pretend to be authoritative or even truthful. It's the naive, vulnerable protagonist discovering reality." Okay, what do we know about Tony? He's a writer, right? Like, he said that was literally an email that he sent to me, and I was like, wow, Tony, so eloquent, so beautiful. So I think that really demonstrates that when we're looking at the idea of creating podcast content, we're stepping up to a different level of production. We're starting to look at our creative writing skills. We're starting to look at our creative recording skills and our interviewing skills. So, you to tell us a little about your podcasting efforts and adventures. So some of you who may not want to share your podcast that you've actually created, has anyone actually tried and maybe not quite succeeded? Or can you tell me a little bit about why perhaps you haven't attempted a podcast already? Technology. What's the main technology issue for you?
I'm okay with recording.
Okay.
But when it comes to actually packaging it so to be ready to put out, it never works.
It never works. Okay, that's really common. Audio editing software is difficult.
Yeah,
you have to practice.
I don't have the understanding of everything.
Of everything, yeah. And if you've never really done it and haven't been shown how to do it, it can be really hard to get your head around. So hopefully today we'll show you a couple of things, and we'll use Hindenburg, which actually makes it really easy. Now, disclaimer, I'm not being paid by Hindenburg or anything to do this. Hindenburg is the program, it's the digital audio workstation we're going to be using. So you have makes it a little bit simpler. The reason that we're working with Hindenburg is that we do recommend it as something for people who've never really had much artificial intelligence embedded in the program that make your audio really clear. They're a Denmark company. They're only a small this storytelling. They've done a bunch of year-long free licenses for anyone in community radio to use, so you can get used to the program, and if you like it, of course, you buy it later. But if you're interested in one of those licenses, please get in touch with me. My cards are up here. I'll pop my email up there. You can chat to Emma as well. We will give you a license for a year so you can get used to it and practice and play on it. And the other thing is really transferable skills. So once you learn how to edit on Hindenburg using your free long license, simple stuff, there's heaps of tutorial videos, then you can transition to something like Adobe Audition if you're interested in that, or you can go back to using that, or you can go back to using Audacity, which is your simple software, which I absolutely love. Okay, more adventures in podcasting. Irene?
No, the reason I haven't done it is because I'm not sure what I legally can put up.
Okay, copyright issues. That's a really good question. Emma is one that can talk to us about that. Am I going to throw that over to you? Do you want to come?
Well, I suppose that the same rules apply for radio in terms of legally, in terms of defamation and those kind of things about the content that you're creating. In terms of copyright of maybe music, you're thinking the music to use, the same rules generally apply. So it is with the two copyright bodies that licenses to community broadcasters are APRA and PPCA, and so they've created a different license separate from the community broadcasting license called a mini web license, I think it is. And so you can go to them and apply for that license. I'm 95% sure that APRA offer that license, the Australian Performing Rights. So in terms of music, that's what it is. In terms of content, if you're repurposing your content from your radio station to your own website, and say ours, whatever's broadcast is our content. They're not going to allow you to repurpose it. Some stations don't have any policies on that at all, but it's always good to check, because if you want to use your radio station name in it, then you'll be representing, well, the audience will think you're representing the views of the radio station, and you probably want to separate yourself. So music, that mini web license, content, check with your radio station. Defamation and those other things that apply in media law, same rules.
So music, including the background music as well?
Yeah, you can get, there's heaps of websites for free database of production music that a radio station has access to as part of their license. So that's as part of your community broadcasting license. But if you type in royalty-free music or copyright-free music, you can download, there's a lot of generous musicians out there that want to get their music out there, and they have different sort of what do you call
Licensing, Creative Commons licensing?
Yeah, or no, just that they say credit my music.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a lot. But what's a really nice thing to do is connect with local musicians, because they want that, if it's possible, use music from your area, and that's the only way that you can easily get copyright from musician permission. It's really just the rigmarole of going to a bigger organisation or recording company and saying, we want to use this music. 1 time out of 10, they might say yes.
Yeah, usually.
And that should be fine. But yeah, production music, it's online, it's free, and you just type in royalty.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about what happens when you upload your podcast to things like SoundCloud and iTunes, and what happens if you've got commercial music in that in a bit.
Generally, they'll take it down right away.
Yeah.
Their robots are insane.
Yeah, so if you have commercial music and you've uploaded it to iTunes or Spotify or SoundCloud, their algorithm will just go through and find it and take it down for you. Just talking about the National Features and Documentary Series, we're working with all community radio stations around the country. All of the community radio stations around the country actually had their web licensing, radio on demand podcasting licensing embedded in their general license, so that's something to check within your station as well. And
so Thursday, it's different again to streaming.
Yeah.
So your streaming is not thrown in with podcast license.
Yeah, they're 2 separate things, but lots of people have a podcast in their general license now as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it depends. Yeah, it's a tick box.
Cool.
Yeah.
They come up
So
to date.
they've come up to date, exactly. So realise we all want to do it. So check that out on your license or with someone at your station. To their local musicians, and they actually composed pieces for the background music and for the actual music throughout it. So that was a really good way of interacting with their local musicians and giving them credit as well.
Tick that community engagement box.
Exactly. All right. Anyone else want to share their non-adventures in podcasting?
I just wanted to ask this question.
Yep.
To bring in something else. 100 years ago, when I started making inquiries about internet radio, and I was told that at the moment there is no license regulation. But if there is license regulation for podcast, that is if you're doing it not attached
To a community radio station. Well, that mini web license, but if you don't have commercial music in it, you don't need any kind of license, right?
Sorry, that's just commercial
That's
music.
just
That's only the commercial.
If it's spoken word content, you're free to go. You can post it wherever you
The
want.
thing is, when you talk about the music, okay, you have licenses here, but there are certain countries where they don't have licenses for as well at the moment. So
That's really hard.
An open thing.
Yeah, but if you're making something in Australia, you come underneath Australian copyright law.
Yeah.
All right, great to hear. Okay, so we're going to move on and have a little bit of a listen to some podcast content. So I'm going to play you an excerpt from the Runner's Guide. Has anyone heard the whole piece? Oh my gosh. So it's a wonderful documentary. I really recommend everyone do it. It's 4 minutes 50, 20 minutes 50. There's 9 of these, so if you're looking for some content to play on your radio program, the majority of them are in English. There is one that a translated voice in it, so it depends on what you're kind of looking for, but you can go to nfds.org.au to pop on board. nfds.org.au to have a look at all the documentaries that come out each year. It's a good way to fill half an hour of your show if you're looking for some extra content. You might find something relevant for you. I'm just going to play this for you because it has unique and really great. So hopefully this works.
It started raining and we were halfway down this pathway. It was sandy, it was uneven, there was a bit of gravel, and my contact lens folded and I couldn't see at all, and I was quite scared. So I said to my guide, I was like, I can't see right now, so I'm going to have to trust you completely. So I clung on to her, I kept my cane out. I knew right from that moment that I could trust this person and that it was going to be fine. She kept me safe until we got back to the cafe, very, very wet, very cold, but I knew it would work.
All right, so if you want to listen to the whole bit of today's story, is about.
It started.
You want to hear it again? This story is about this really great organizational group of people, community group essentially, in that assists people who have a vision impairment to go jogging. So they are a jogging or running group. They get together, they have guides for people, they tether each other together, and they run around South Bank in Brisbane and have a really great time. And you know, the documentary draws out a whole load of issues around exercise and people who have vision impairment and how real for them being able to exercise, but also the social aspect of being able to be out with people doing something social, making new friends, that sort of thing. So Katharina came to us with, and we just thought the concept was really great. So when it comes to making podcast content, having a good concept is really the place to start. You're looking for something unique, something different. Katharina actually had a language program that had done this guide stuff. So she'd actually met someone through her show. You know how we have people coming in for interviews on our programs all the time? She had someone come into her show and do an interview about this, and she was like, I could make an entire documentary about this piece or a podcast series about this, talking about all the people who do this program, because it's a really interesting story. It resonates with a lot of people: isolation, loneliness, struggles in terms of exercise. People with came to her mind about what she could share with this story. But the other thing she thought she could share about also skills on the heart, a solid content. So the other cast is some gear, and that's how much is that going to burn a hole in my pocket? How much stuff do I have to buy? And I'm here to tell you, you don't need a lot of stuff, and you don't need to spend a lot of money to make a good quality podcast. I mean, that's the whole idea of podcasting. It was born from the idea, you know, a radio show with their computer mic to their computer. So essentially, you need a computer, or, you know, somewhere you can borrow a computer from, or the library where you can go and use their computer. You need a device. So a lot of our stations may have recorders that we can go and borrow, but we also have our nifty smartphones now, most set up to make some really good recordings. So Emma has prepared this one earlier. Basically what we've got is we've got about a $2 shop tripod here. The tripod is great for stabilizing the sound. We can set it up on the table, and that way, if I'm interviewing Nick here, I get him a little bit closer. Corner here, this little mugged in. This is a little Rode mic that we've got plugged in here. It plugs into a smartphone. These are a little bit of an investment. It's less than $200 to get one of these, but I suggest if you're keen to get something at the moment, Black Friday. So any website that sells electronic equipment, now is the time to go buy. But you don't need one. It just makes the audio a little bit clearer, a little bit more clarity. But if you have good recording conditions, you can actually just use the built-in mics that are in smartphones these days. You can download a whole range of apps that actually make the audio clearer, that do some inbuilt equalization, and we can share some with those with you later. And it will automatically set the levels, and you can also manually adjust the levels in a whole bunch of different apps for your smartphone. So you can make your whole podcast on your smartphone. Actually use here, you could use the Rode recorder, you could use anything, and then edit it all up on your iPhone and then send it up online. So you either need a computer, an iPad, or an iPhone to create your content. That's essentially it. You might also want to get another kind of microphone, a plug-in microphone that has a lead on it, so you can get nice close audio, or you can go around and record some really good sounds, the sounds of someone's feet, that sort of thing, which is what Katarina did. She things in that documentary, she collected all her impressions, which is what Katarina did. She things in that documentary, she collected all her impressive, and she collected the sound going across the ground. She collected the sound of one of their guide dogs jumping up on the bed and panting. It's really, really cute. She didn't have any special equipment. She just was able to do that really easily. And it sounds like her piece sounds like an amazing movie because of it.
Probably a great place to start, really. If you're really tuned into your atmosphere of where your story is taking place, it'd be easier to transport the audience into there, and building up that sound library and seeing what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, no, anytime. I think that's what it's about, really, is like embedding your listener in the story through sound effects. That's something that we do in creative audio production. Okay, so we've got a smartphone. You might need some headphones. Most of us have those. But I think the number one thing about any equipment that you have is that you need to practice using it, and it's going to be trial and error. Never expect that you're going to go out there and you're going to get the perfect recording first time. You know, hundreds and hundreds of recordings, field recordings. So, and I listen back to them now and I think, wow, how did I not hear that through that entire interview that I did? So it's about tuning your ear, practicing so you start to hear that sort of thing. Okay, the other thing about this Renee is that it has a really unique, created this identity for her podcast. In terms of the way it has a cinematic, it has no anywhere in it, which is of the community. So she's created this sort of identity for her podcast through the sound. And she keeps that entire piece. It's really important to consistent sound. It's just like a radio show in a way, but you're getting a little bit more. Another thing is to create a little intro, so you have, talk a little summary, tiny little summary of what the podcast is about, some background music, something really, because if they're listening online, scroll through they're listening. Everything in there. As Katarina's piece is that in narration documentary, but she transcribed that and did what we call a paper draft. So every interview is transcribed. Has anyone interviewed? A few people. Transcribing interviews is possibly the most painful. So transcribing interviews is to help you actually put your script together. So if you are going to use script, if you've transcribed, you write your script in between the interviews, and it makes sure it demonstrates that you're not going to repeat what's said by the person that you've interviewed. So a tip for if you have a Google account or you set up a Google account, there's Google Docs in there. When you open a Google Doc, there's a little tool that's called voice to text. It's incredible. Play your interview on some speakers, let your computer listen to it. It will transcribe the entire thing, and it can do multiple languages. So it's not perfect, of course. You have to go back through and do a bit of an edit, but if you keep it slow, what I do when I'm using it is I practice. so it's not perfect, of course. You have to go back through and do a bit of an edit. But if you keep it slow, what I do when I'm using it is I play chunks. So I'll play like, a minute or two into the computer, pause it, let the computer kind of catch up. It's a lot of typing myself. For instance, I transcribed 5-minute stories the other day. That's something that would normally take around 5 hours to do, that sort of transcription, because it was scripting, interviews, all sorts of stuff, quite complex packaged stories. It only take around 5 hours. I did it in an hour and a half, so using Google Docs. So it really cuts down the time. So yeah, scripting is really important. Transcribing our interviews and then laying them out in a paper draft so that we get our structure correct, or whether in scripts. As we heard from Tony before in his quote, it's a chance for you to get your creative writing skills on and actually start doing some creative writing around what you're doing. Start to be a little bit more expressive and flowery in writing that you do. Not too much. Hold back a little. All right, so the other bit different to radio shows. Podcasts tend to be pre-recorded content that we spend time editing, mixing, making something with sound effects so much fun. Okay, and the last, this is a great podcast, is that it's been put somewhere where it's really easy to share. So podcasts are of no use if content you time on it, and then it has to go somewhere, it has to be heard by people, it's got to be shared around. So podcasts need to be shareable. There's a couple of ways to make something really shareable, and one of the first things I talk to you about is length. So 24 minutes. Most of the ones that when I was at Converge, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander conference the other day, all the podcasts they're doing is around 10 to 15 minutes. It's short content. It's not content that goes for 3 hours. You want to make something that probably goes for half an hour, because people want to listen to it on their train ride. They want to listen to it, on a short trip, that sort of thing. And they want to hear the next part of the story. So if you have a really great story and you think, I can make 5 episodes, why not hour episodes instead? So build that. About sharing is that you need, it depends on what platform you put it on, blog, or if you just popped it up on the station website. It's not as easy to share if we put it somewhere like SoundCloud, Whooshkaa, some of those podcasting platforms. So the two places that we often use are SoundCloud. A couple of people, excellent. Okay, so SoundCloud's good because you can share and embed and pass it out through the audio. Write that on. And it is free to use. It's free to card details in or anything. And essentially what it is it's a all-in-one solution for getting your podcast out to the world. Essentially, you create your own Whooshkaa account, and I think it's called Whooshkaa because it's like whoosh. You press the button and it goes out everywhere. But basically, I think it's 1A. 1A? Yeah. So Whoosh H. We'll have to look that up. Google it. Someone Google it. Whooshkaa. I think it is. We'll check. Wait, pop it up.
Just 1H.
1H at the end, or do you want?
WH.
Yeah.
OOSH.
To Whooshkaa, you can do it. What time is it? I have all right. So, okay, can I have everyone's attention? Okay, So what I'm going to just demonstrate up on the screen here, I'm going to sit down while I do it so that you can see over my head, is I'm going to show you some really simple stuff on Hindenburg, and then you can have a little bit of or are we going to 4:30?
4:30.
Okay.
We can hang around.
Yeah. Okay, just your attention.